Hello and welcome to Everyday People Extraordinary Performance, a podcast that explores what it really takes to show up, grow, and do great work. Hosted by myself, Natalie Byrne, and my colleague Abigail Wilson. This series shares real conversations with people from all walks of life. It is not about the big titles or polished success stories. It is about the care, resilience, and intent behind the way people perform every day. Brought to you by Fit as Oak, a team that supports high-performing teams and cultures. This podcast creates space for honest reflections and meaningful moments that often go unseen. Here is today's episode.
Speaking of kind of the mind being this resource that you can tap into, if we're kind of looking at finding focus when you're feeling busy, how do you help people slow down, kind of that kind of fast brain, slow brain thinking we were kind of speaking about there? How do you help them slow down and focus on what really matters in that moment?
Yeah, superb. So just I suppose to give you an example of this, a live example. So my position, rugby was hooker. And so again, for everyone that's not, that's not used to rugby, there's a thing called a scrum, and it's one of the few positions where you are eye to eye, head to head with your opposite number. And you have to fly in and give him as much stick as you can. And so you have to be quite aggressive. And the mindset is very much, kill or be killed type thing. But then you go to the side of the pits and you've got to throw a line out where it's all about waiting. So it's a closed skill. You've got to be there and you're waiting for the right person at the right time. You're releasing the ball, a bit like the penalty. You don't want to get all tense, and you make a mistake, you're in trouble. And so I suppose I'm hopefully qualified to answer this. And one of the things I found amazing was breathing. So I suppose if I break it down, firstly, it's probably the skill. You need to make sure that it's a skill that you're really good at or that you've honed. Then I think to get into the right state, it's breathing. And there's an exercise called box breathing that we used to do, but even just one big deep breath, even if you do it now, I know I'm talking a lot and you're probably a lot more chilled and relaxed, but if you just take one really big, what you call belly breath, not just in here, but breathing from right below, you just feel calmer. So I think sometimes for something quick, it's breathing. If it's something a little bit longer, it's sort of meditation, mindfulness. I remember when I first started to learn about mindfulness, and of course, I don't know if you can tell from my energy, but I'm not the calmest person in the world. And there's a guy called Sejad Sharmin, and he talked a lot about saboteurs, and he was sort of saying that you can do reps of mindfulness. Of course, then you were in my world. I was like, is that like weight? But he basically said just by stopping and just rubbing your finger and your middle finger, or whichever thing you want to do, but just by doing this and really trying to feel the ridges in your fingers, it just brings you, it brings you into focus. It centers you. And so if you do 20 of those a day, and of course, then I was like, okay, I can do this. And then you start to realize that actually, I did do forms of meditation, visualization, but I think it's a physical state. You've got to get yourself physically ready. So I've got lots of tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. Another one is if you're ever in a board meeting or you're in a meeting and you're getting tense and you can feel it, you just turn your hands upside down. And that again is, so I would say mindset, physicality, the physical body, changing state, and then breathing. So
I've heard one when you give presentations, and before you go on stage and give a presentation, do an exercise just beforehand to get into that state of mind, but also to pump you up a bit, get your blood flowing, opens up the breathing as well. So yeah, I've heard of that one. I think that's one just to focus on something else and calm down and get you going.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing there because I've just thought about it, but one of the, again, I don't mean to be onto rugby again, but I can't help it. But there's a thing called the vagus nerve. We said about preparing for presentations, and I've actually used this before interviews when people are really nervous, they really want the job. And the vagus nerve, part of breathing fires the vagus nerve. But actually, there's a pose called the lion pose in yoga, where you basically poke your tongue out and breathe. And of course, what if you know your rugby? What team pulls a silly face?
I was going to say, you sound like a New Zealander there.
Yes.
So you All Blacks, we get Haka, and I don't know if they realise it, and if someone they'll end up getting cancelled because they're probably playing a competitive advantage, firing their vagus nerve, which brings clarity of thought. So it takes it from the monkey past the computer, and you get into the human brain. And to get there, you have to slow everything down. You have to be calm, and they'll be doing that, even though everyone thinks it's a war dance. They're actually breathing and firing the vagus nerve, which is probably why they start most games so fast and that's an advantage.
There you go. We solved the mystery. Let's talk a bit about decision making under pressure. Obviously, in rugby, you're under pressure quite a bit, and you have to make quick decisions under pressure. So, what kind of lessons learned do you have from, or can you take again from rugby, from the corporate world, but also about sort of your Everest experience? I mean, that's also a lot of pressure. I do want to talk more about that later, but yeah, what can leaders improve really to make decisions better when they are, the stakes are high and under pressure?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I suppose it's a toughie because what is pressure first and foremost? And so recently, the South African coach Rassie Erasmus, I think Gareth Southgate ended up using it as well. But they basically turned pressure. So sort of said pressure is privilege. And again, we can get into all the neuroscience of it if you want to around actually stress causes cortisol, which is a killer. Pressure is performance, and it is a privilege. And so making decisions under pressure, again, going back to your mindset and your attitude, if it's about performance, then you're making creative decisions. If you're making decisions as in disaster decisions, like, oh, don't do that, you might die. Oh, don't do that. So I think it depends on this sort of what's going on in the circumstances. But I think with sport, we were very much around, do you know the role? Your role, have you done it? Which again goes back to that experience bit. There is something about experience, and is there someone you can sort of in sport, because you practice it and practice it and practice it. I'd always say the best players are the ones. So good players understand their role. Great players understand not just their role, but how they can impact the game. And then the world-class players, I wish I was one of them, but they could almost see it before it happened. Yeah, they were able to, and so things slow down. So yeah, I suppose some of it will come with experience. And then if you haven't got experience, the beauty of team stuff is who's around you that can help you with those decisions. I think what I find in the corporate world is people think they're either life or death decisions under pressure. So of course that shuts you down, or they think it's all on themselves. And of course that creates stress. So I think now I'm reflecting on the question, it's probably, is it pressure or is it stress? And I think it was Jeff Bezos, I think, that says a lovely way around decision making. Is it a two-way door? So is this a door that you can come back through? So is something you're trying, or is this a door that once you've gone through, it closes? And based on that, you can start to help you with your decision making.
That's good one.
Yeah. You have spoken previously that you had to retire from rugby due to a heart condition. So do you mind just telling us a little bit about that, and what did that experience teach you in terms of dealing with a setback, and how did that shape the way you now coach others through setbacks?
Yeah, so this was a strange one actually. So sort of midway through 2012, I was going through, right, what's next? Career's coming to an end. I was having coaching, and I was looking at being a pilot. And one of the coaching questions that was asked, and it goes right back to you, Natalie, when you said at the beginning, sort of like, what was next? you don't really know until someone sits down and sort of says, look, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? And the guy that was coaching me was amazing. And he asked me this question. Well, the first question he asked me that was very powerful was, what does your wife want? I was like, oh, I'm not sure. I need to go and ask her. Because as an athlete, you can get quite sort of blinkered and selfish. But he then asked me sort of like, what are the elements of work that you really love? And one of the things I love, my driver, is travel. As I say, being a state schoolboy from Devon, I don't think I went abroad until I was about 15. And then since then, rugby opened the world to me. So I love travel. You want a job that's you got a bit of kudos with rugby. There is a bit of ego in there. So a job that actually, it's a good title. It's help. It's good. But then you're also helping others. I love team stuff. I'm a avid learner, and I love learning. So I couldn't do something that would just be repetitive time after time. So I was being a pilot, long-winded way, mainly because I like turning left on the plane. But I think it is more to do with the traveling around the world. But I was doing my license, and when you do your pilot's license, you have to pass a medical to fly in a circle. They call it a circuit. So you take off and left, come round and land again. And to do that on your own, you need a medical. So of course I've had some of the best healthcare in my whole career. And so I turned up to the civil aviation is quite an important institution. But it's sort of run from the lady doctor that I went to her house was in a bedroom in street in the back of her house. And so she put me on an ECG and she said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I can't sign your medical certificate." I was like, "Oh my goodness, come on. I've got, I'm a professional rugby player. I get tested every year. I just need the certificate to fly in a circle." And she's like, "I'm really sorry, I can't sign you off." So I thought, oh God. So I went back to the rugby club and I spoke to the doctor. I had a fantastic relationship with Julian Widowson. And I said, "Jules, now I know I'm not allowed to do any dangerous sports, but for my career, I'm learning to fly." And he just looks, he said, "Oh, yeah, how long have you been doing it?" "Oh, 3 or 4 months, Jules. But I need a medical certificate to fly in a circle, blah, blah, blah." He said, "No problems." He said, "What did the lady say?" And I said, "It's just an unusual heart rhythm." And he said, "Let's cry, cardiac risk in the young," who I'm now a sort of a patron of. He said, they come in every year and they're actually in 3 weeks. So if you wait, then you can be tested, and they've got ECGs, they've got echoes, they've got everything. So I was like, "All right, Jules, but 3 weeks, I need to fly in a circle." You know what you're like, you're quite sort of. Anyway, cry come in, and I'll never forget, I've been tested every year for 10 years. I laid on the bed and this lady sort of was like chatting away as they do, and then went, "Oh, I don't like this." And I was like, and of course at the time I was like, "Oh, then no, it'll be fine." And then so of course, then all the other doctors came over, and I've got an inverted T wave, which it's named HOCM, and so it presents like heart disease. So initially it sounds really like, oh, but then they've realized that it's actually our athlete's heart is another way of describing it. But it is actually the muscle of the wall of your heart thickens. So when you lift weights, your muscles grow, your heart grows as an athlete, and most of the time it grows outwards, whereas my one chamber grew inwards. So at the bottom, I've got a thickening of the wall of my heart. So how I describe it to people, or how it was described to me, was that your heart, mine under revs. So if we're here at 50 beats a minute, mine thinks it's at 40, which is fine. I live a normal life. When we go to 100 beats a minute, mine thinks it's at 80. Again, can't cause any trouble. The issue is when you go to 200 beats a minute, yours is saying stop, and mine's going, 160, we can keep going, which can give you a heart attack. So they described it to me, and like I said, at the time I was 30 years old. I think I might have been 31, and I was like, "Don't worry about it. I've lasted this long. I'll just keep going." And then that's when the coaching was amazing, because he sort of asked me, one, what would the impact be on at the time I only had one boy and one on the way. What would the impact be if you dropped dead in front of your kids? And I was like, oh, there we go, Lee. Think about other people. And then the other question he asked me was, if you weren't being paid, would you still be playing? And I was like, no, my body hurts. It was hurting. So that was when it was a case of, you could carry on, but there's a risk. And then what else is after rugby, which I mean, and I thank him every day whenever I speak to him, whenever I bump into him, I always say, that helped me so much. Because I did go back to training a couple of times, and going back to the mindset is, if anything happened, I was like, what was that? What was that?
Yeah.
And you'd
hypervigilant.
You'd never be able to perform at that level again, thinking in the back of your mind. So I retired in January 2013.
So what made you then decide to do the North Pole and the Mount Everest afterwards?
Yes. So this is an interesting one. So then it was okay, but in your mind, you still have this, can I, can't I,
Absolutely.
Can I push myself? But at the same time, you really want to give back. And I've been involved in some wonderful sort of charity events, dinners. I've met some amazing people, and the Wooden Spoon for me is a phenomenal charity. And they were trying to raise money and trying to raise profile. And one of the ways to raise really good profile is to do something pretty sort of crazy. And as a rugby player, you're a little bit institutionalized in terms of you get May, June off. You might not even get May, June off if you've got a Lions tour to go on. Probably get 4 weeks of a year at the most to be off. And so when you get the opportunity to go away with people and see them in a different environment, well, that was quite interesting. And this is where I sort of started to get my eyes opened to the psyche of people in corporate world. Listening to, we can go into it in a minute, but raising money for charity, so giving back, meeting new people and testing yourself and having an experience, seeing the world, that it ticked so many of my boxes. And then obviously the final box I had to get ticked was my wife, Abigail, who is the most important, and she gave me the green light. And it was brilliant. It was a phenomenal experience, going to a place where it's unbelievably beautiful. It's a desert. I didn't realize the North Pole's a desert, and it's arid, dry. And you can't even make a snowball, but it's -35. But if the sun's out, you're in the t-shirt because there's moisture in the air. The only problem is when the clouds come over and it's -35, it's the bleakest place in the world. When that wind comes, it's like razor blades. So it's an extreme place. But it was amazing to see. And again, lessons that I learned was, we went away with 4 or 5 sort of chief execs. They'd spent a lot of money to come and do some stuff that nobody gets the opportunity to do. And we were trekking out to the north. We were trekking out, and part of rugby is that you all sort of have your say, and who's in charge. And it was quite funny early on. These CEOs are so used to giving orders and follow me, and we go, you might be going the wrong way. I don't question really, and we're like, we always question each other. And of course, off they go. And we'd go, and so we'd either go, right, are we doing the team thing where we all perish together, or are we doing that, you'll come back in a minute and you'll find us. And so we had these experiences where people were like, oh my God, you got to look after each other. It's ultimate teamwork. So those were really good experiences. And you see someone's true colors when you put them under extreme pressure. So the North Pole was fantastic. And of course, because we got the world record being the most northerly game of rugby, some numpty somewhere decided, well, what's the next challenge?
Go up.
The South Pole is very expensive. So we looked at basically playing the highest game of rugby ever, which was at Everest Advanced Base Camp. And that was a different experience. So for me, North Pole, I'd go again tomorrow. I'd take you both. It'd be brilliant. You'd love it. Altitude, 5,000 meters. You don't know who is going to, well, I mean, we had a gentleman with us who was in his 70s, didn't get touched by altitude whatsoever. We had, me as a supposed elite athlete. Oh my God. One of the days I woke up in a tent on oxygen because I was in real trouble coming back down. Tamara Taylor, one of the other international lady rugby players, was in all sorts of trouble. Altitude is not something you mess with. It was, yeah. So yeah, it was a good experience, but oh my goodness, that was crazy.
And a fair amount of resilience needed to keep going, whether it's that you're trekking through cold desert or whether it's that you're dealing with altitude, as you say, not to be messed with. So I think that resilience to just keep going, if you're then taking that into organizations and into the corporate world, how would you define resilience? What does that look like to you, and how can leaders build that in a healthy and sustainable way?
Yeah, brilliant. So resilience is a really interesting topic, and I'm seeing it in the corporate world a lot at the moment. And for me, resilience is the ability to bounce back, to handle the pressure or the stress or whatever it is. And I think with rugby, because you lose and you learn from your losses. And I would actually say, just a caveat, I think going back to I said, well, I can test you actually, that the top athletes, are they the most capable? No. What have they got? They've got the best
attitude.
I do.
With that capabilities.
Yeah, and I honestly think that the best athletes are addicted to losing, because that's where your best, your biggest learnings come from. And if you never fail, you're probably never learning. And I know fail again is like the vulnerability is a bad word. Oh, don't fail. But I just think that's where experience comes from. And if you've never failed, you've never really pushed yourself, or if you never made a mistake, you haven't pushed yourself hard enough. And what I think we're doing in society at the moment, again, I'm going to have a rant so you can close me down. But I think because of the way we look after our children at the moment, and there's a lot of stuff around Gen Z stuff, is that they've never been told, like I was told a lot at school, that wasn't good enough. And my results sometimes reflected in it. And it was your choice. Do you work harder? And, I go into school sometimes and there's no winning or losing, Lee, it's taking part. And I'm like, okay, I don't think it should all be about winning and losing. But if you don't get that feeling of failure, or of letting yourself down, or being told, I was told early on, I won't be a basketball player. And I could either go, I'll prove you wrong, like I did in rugby, you're not going to be big enough. Or you can look and go, actually, probably right there. But there was something around that resilience as a kid, whereas I'm seeing it now, lots of kids are never taught, you're great, you're great, you're great, you're great. And then when you fail as a youngster, if you've got a caring family around you, or you've got a support network, that's actually the best time to fail, because you learn those coping mechanisms. We're almost going, right, let's not let our kids fail. And then the first time you fail is when you're on your own, you're 20 odd with no support network. And so I think something around that resilience is you need to be able to fail in a safe environment. So if I'm trying to link this to the corporate world, you don't want to just tell people, go on, get on with it, because you'll have chaos. But how are people learning? How are people getting better if you never give them feedback that's giving them ways to improve? Or even some companies go, oh well, not only we do it every 6 months. Some are so scared now. We only give it every year. In rugby, you're getting feedback every Monday. That was good enough. That wasn't good enough. How are you improving? And actors, I love actors and musicians. I always sort of say, if you don't go to sport because we've got a bit of an ego, go to actors and musicians, because they are constantly, how was that good? How did it feel?
Yeah.
What was my impact on you? That for me is the real essence of, so getting good feedback builds resilience. Trying things that aren't catastrophic, builds resilience. But again, I think it's a leader's job to create the environment where people can learn and make mistakes. I remember going to I heard Richard Branson speak once, and he was sort of like, "I've never failed in business," and I was like, Virgin Cola, Virgin this, but of course, the way he looks at it is that, you know, he, as long as he learns from those experiences, the learnings that he's had, he's applied to other businesses. So therefore, that's probably an investment in his path. And then you look at even better businesses now, you know, like Apple, and I can't remember who it was the other day. One of the top tech guys was saying that the problem is that as you're growing and you make mistakes, you think those mistakes. It was Alexa, it was Amazon, it was Bezos. He was saying that Alexa's a big failure because it's cost 10 billion, but actually he's learned so much from that. That if he didn't embrace that, if he kept going, we can only make £1 million. You know, the business is growing over here. We can only make £1 million mistakes. You'll never get the huge growth. Is if you're a £1 billion company, you're gonna make £1 billion mistakes. You've got to learn.
Yeah, it's that growth mindset.
Yeah.
I know it's like to teach them how to do that and how to experience that growth mindset, and that comes with mistakes and failures and things, how to cope with it, and also knowing yourself. So I think as a leader, you really need to know yourself, but you're not only going to know yourself if you learn from your feedback and you get feedback and you learn from your mistakes. So how important, and this is kind of a preloaded question really, but how important is it for leaders to really know themselves,
Yeah.
their strengths, their blind spot, their habits, and where do you suggest people start when looking at sort of that self-awareness piece?
Yeah, I think self-awareness is the key for growth. It's the number one, the number one leadership skill. If you're not self-aware, then you don't know what like you say, what your weaknesses are, what your blind spots are, but you also don't know the impact that you're having on other people. And that goes back to my attitude, is that you can have such a good positive and negative effect on people. So I would always encourage people to, to whether it's a self-awareness questionnaire, whether it's to ask feedback, whether it's to, I'd stay away from the anonymous bit, and ask for the right feedback as well. Ask for opportunities to grow, and is there any way? There's really good questions around. Is there anything that you see me doing or not doing that holds me back? I think sometimes we just go, give me some feedback. People are like, you're my boss. I'm great. Whereas actually asking, what do you think I could do better? What's something that if I did could add massive impact to the business? Again, it was something that we did regularly as rugby players, is that you'd sit at the end of a season or the start of the season, and people would say to you that this is what we really value you, and it goes back to belonging. And here's, if you did this, you could be even better. So I remember one of the best bits of feedback, I'm quite smiley, and one of the second rows, Danny Grucock, said, everyone thinks you're too nice. They see you in training and you are tough, but because you're always smiling, they think you're too nice. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do about that? And it's, one day you might just have to, lose it or be aggressive, and then I remember being at the bottom of a ruck having a fight, and he's like, with somebody else, not me.
So yeah, careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Right, but just that whole, having someone that you really trust, let you know what you can work on is, and that's ask your wife, because generally they know you better than anybody. Ask. I always tend to ask exec assistants or receptionists, because actually a receptionist sees you when you walk into the office, when you're at your most busy, and do you say, hi, how are you? And how's your weekend? Or do you just go and walk past? Tells a very, very interesting picture.
Sure. So keeping with purpose and motivation, in sport, obviously there's a clear goal.
Yeah.
But in leadership and life, it can sometimes feel a bit harder to stay motivated and keep going. So how do you help people stay connected to the purpose and keep that energy going? So, finding that goal.
Yeah. So this is lovely. I think it's lovely in terms of there's a brilliant YouTube video and it talks about procrastination. He's a phenomenal talker. And he sort of says that the thing with procrastination is we're very good when we have a deadline put in, and you have to watch the video because he does it so much better than me. But he basically says that we all procrastinate, and then you've got this the procrastination monkey, which takes your I'm supposed to do some work, but I'm just gonna surf the internet and find out who's the latest in Married at First Sight or whatever, and then you put a deadline in, and we're very good if we put deadlines in. The problem is that in life we don't put deadlines in because it's life. And so he did this wonderful exercise, which I've now done with quite a few coachees, where he puts up a box for every week of your life. And then if you're 40 or 50, he then says, well, that half's pretty much gone if you think you're going to live to 80. And so you've only got this many boxes left. And what is it that you want to leave behind? What do you want your legacy to be? And the way you can do this in business is actually set a common goal, an achievable. What are we going after? Is it the number one company? I try and steer companies away from just setting a number target because, let's hit 20 million this year. And you say, well, what does that mean to everybody? And a lot of times, well, it means that the shareholders get richer and I get a bonus. Well, that's brilliant, but that's not motivating for everybody else. And as we know with the younger generation, being an amazing place to come to work, or a friend of mine with the drinks company once said, what would it be like handing over your business card and saying, I'm the number one drinks company, as opposed to, yeah, we're currently number 4, but how does it make you feel and how hard are you going to work? So I think if you can create an amazing purpose, again, that links emotionally, you'll get that, the attitude, the discretionary effort. If you can create an amazing environment where people feel like they can take risk, they can be creative, again, you'll change people's attitude. So I think there is a fair bit in that, the purpose side of things, the, just helping people to want to have a timeline. Let's go after this. Should we say 3 years, 2 years, 1 year? There is that a bit of accountability, but then also make it for a bigger purpose. But I think we all love to be. I haven't met anyone yet who hasn't gone, oh, I like to get better, or I'd like to know I'm winning, or I like to. And I think sometimes in business we shy away from, let's go after something, measure it. Are we winning? And then celebrate it. That's another thing I find in the corporate world. We don't. So often we go, hit the target, well done, let's go, boom, on to the next one. Whereas actually it's just amazing. Look, well, and again, digging into what happened in the journey, what were the fun bits, when were we up against it, and almost, because humans, we love stories, and yet we don't use them enough in our business and day-to-day world. I think there's nothing better than doing a bit of a review of the year and almost go back and relive it. So if there's looking back, there's also looking forward. Do you say, if we hit this target, let's all go and walk a mountain in Italy, or what motivates us? Is it, I know one company that they just want to have a few beers and get to know each other, and it's worth having something, a reward at the end.
You've mentioned a couple times that during the kind of course of our conversation about different generations now, the likes of Gen Z. So do you think there's a shift in how people want to be led? As I say, specifically thinking about generational shifts with Gen Z, is that something that you're seeing happening in either sport or in organizations that you either work with in corporate?
Yeah, and I think it's human nature, isn't it? Though we want difference, we want diversity, as we call it, whether that's diversity of thought, whether that's diversity of background, whether that's diversity of person. But then we actually don't like change also, and we're like, and that's why I do think leadership is a bit of an art, because we can't change generations. That's what they've been exposed to, what our experience. I was chatting to a group the other day and they were saying, oh my God, what's it like? How good is it? Or should we put our mobile phones down because it was great before them? That's all well and good, but my son's never known anything but a mobile phone. So he hasn't got that. Oh, the good old days. And I think that's part of the art of leadership is understanding, and we go back to Natalie, your self-awareness of what bit of you, because there's no point in just going, well, I'll just employ people like me because then it's never going to work. So it's how do you unlock those different generations? What do you need to know about them? And how do you get the best out of them? And if you don't ask and you don't experience, then you're really struggling. But I also do believe that companies can really save a lot of heartache by actually mapping out the culture first and saying, this is the culture of this company, whether it's fun, whether it's competitive, whether it's boring, put it out there so that then people join and they don't go into survival mode where they just go, well, I don't like that. I don't like that. And they go, oh no, I've joined that company because I want to be part of that tribe, that team. And I think that's where businesses can really help themselves by setting out the culture and only employing people that like the culture. Because what I am seeing is lots of businesses employ people and then people go, oh, well, that's not my values. That's not what I want. And then try and internally change it. And the question I always ask, but it goes back to high performing teams. So a good one at the moment is, working from home. If you ask me, do I want to work from home? I'm like, of course I want to work from home. It's amazing. But then if you ask me, is it best for the business that I work from home? I go, oh, let's take my selfish hat off. And it's not selfish, but it's my personal opinion. Do I want to work from home? And then I go, well, is it best for the business? And we go back to how do we learn? Oh, well, we learn from others. Oh, okay. So that's probably where if I'm young in the job, I need to learn. Is it the knowledge sharing? Is it the purpose? Well, we can't be a team if we're not necessarily connected. So I think there's a whole piece there where, by asking me, the person individually, you're going to probably get the wrong answer.
And reflecting sports versus business leadership, looking back through your time in rugby and your work with different organisations, how do you think leadership has changed since you've been in the business? What's stayed the same and what's different now?
I think leadership, I mean, I've always had different styles of leadership and I love characters. And it fascinated me from an early age. I think leadership will always keep evolving. I think where leaders have become even more important now, I think, my opinion, is that the world, experience, people mistook good leadership for high levels of experience. And I think experience used to be really good because you were the expert and you knew. So we knew back in the 50s what the world would look like in the 80s. It sort of changed over 10-year periods, but very slowly. I think now the world changes so fast. And I think the best leaders I've found are the ones that surround themselves with better people than they are. And they trust that those people will do their job and they create a great environment. Because if you can't change and you can't pivot with the speed, then you're already dead. And we will see loads and loads of businesses change at a much faster rate. You're already seeing it than we did in the 2000s and we did in the 80s. So you look at big banks at the moment, they are actually having to try and find ways to move these big monoliths, because if they don't Revolut, Chase Bank, they'll just eat them because they're agile, because they're fast. So it's as a leader, I think you have to embrace change a lot more. I actually call it, I'm going to have another rant now. In terms of change, I think triggers the chimp, the prefrontal cortex. And if I tell you to change, you can say, oh no, how dare you tell me to change? Whereas if I say, look, we got to evolve, otherwise we're gonna, we'll be extinct. And even with my dad, you can't change me. Or Dad, you didn't have a mobile phone, you now do. Maybe I evolved. And it just, evolution is something you have to do. And I think if businesses evolve quick enough, they'll survive. So yeah.
At the end of the podcast, we do like to ask 3 questions to every guest. So if you don't mind, we'll jump into those. So what does extraordinary performance mean to you?
Oh, yes. I think extraordinary performance for me is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and performing better than you ever believed you could. That's extraordinary performance. I think in a world where your mind will put you in a box, and I think if you can find a way to exceed an expectation, your expectation, somebody else's, that's extreme performance.
Next question. What does a culture of high-performing team look like to you, or what are the markers of a high-performing team?
Yeah, I would say there's one, and it's high levels of trust.
Love that. What does good leadership look like to you?
Oh, brilliant. Good leadership. I love the 5 levels of leadership where 1, people follow you because they have to. 2, they follow you because they like you. 3, they follow you because you're successful. 4, they follow you because you've grown them. And for me, the ultimate respect, when you walk the talk, you are fully authentic. People know what you stand for, and you do the other 4. I think that is for me the best testament of leadership. And I think as I'm coaching more and more people, I ask them actually not what they want to achieve in their career, but what do you want? For me, true wisdom is what people say to you when you've left and in the future. So is there nothing better than someone coming to you one day, knocking on your door and saying, do you know what, when I worked for you, the business was great, you grew me. So that, for me, going from a leader to being wise is the special shift.
The kind of impact and legacy piece, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Oh, wow.
Powerful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today, Lee. It has been inspiring, it's been insightful, and I think packed with lessons for everyone, if I'm honest. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.